Hello and welcome to the Road to Autonomy. The Road to Autonomy is brought to you in part by Stantec Generation AV. Stantec Generation AV combines some of the most experienced AV experts in the industry with the resources of a global engineering firm. Stantec Generation AV provides education, consulting, assessment, and guidance to any industry interested in autonomous vehicles. Learn more at stantec.com. Hello and welcome to the Road to Autonomy. I am your host, Grayson Brulte. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to have Cheng Lu, President and CEO TuSimple. Welcome to the podcast, Cheng.
Thanks, Grayson. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to have you here. You are the first CEO of a publicly traded autonomous vehicle company, not just trucking, but vehicle in general. So it's an absolute honor to have you here. TuSimple, as I said publicly in the Bloomberg article, is in the leadership position. So thank you for taking the time to come here to talk about why TuSimple is in that leadership position.
Again, thank you. And very grateful to be in the position that we are and where I am. And as I expressed many times to my team, really, I got to be on the podium at NASDAQ, but this is a team effort. This certainly can be done by one person. So really grateful for that and this opportunity. The IPO is a massive milestone for TuSimple, as well as the overall autonomous driving industry. First and only company to be publicly listed in this industry, first pure play. I think it's great for investors. And as part of the IPO process, investors did come to understand that TuSimple is a unique business. We have very strong proprietary technology. We have great hardware and commercial partnerships. And we have a unique go-to-market strategy, Autonomous Freight Network, that puts everything together. And that gives us a long-term, sustainable competitive advantage in what we're trying to do. So grateful for investors' recognition and their confidence in us.
You're right. I know a lot of your team members personally, and there's some great individuals, and there are also some extremely smart, bright, talented individuals. But it takes leadership at the top, and I give you a lot of credit for what you did. And I want to point out, you believe in transparency. I am a huge fan of public markets, and you did it right. You said, hello, markets, we're going to go traditional IPO. We're not going to go the SPAC baloneyville. We're going to do it right. Why choose a traditional IPO instead of a SPAC when Bloomberg Businessweek had the article called it the SPAC bonanza? And you said, no, we're going to do things the right way, the old-fashioned way.
Great question. We certainly evaluated different options. And this was middle of last year when SPACs were starting to take off. And we quickly made the decision to go the traditional route. It's not for everybody. SPAC has its benefits. But for us, we felt that we were mature enough and confident in our business to be able to go the traditional route. And as you said, the traditional IPO route takes a lot longer time. You have to be vetted by bankers, lawyers, research analysts, investors. It's a much longer process. SEC, of course. It's not a M&A where you can basically announce something and also give forward-looking projections. Traditional IPO, there's a lot of rules and regulations. And more importantly, it allows us to be very transparent. So because of this, we got great research coverage. We spent a lot of time with the research analysts. Some of them has come to Tucson to look at our technology. So this really is part of our philosophy as a company, to be transparent.
Rules and regulations in public markets protect investors. And it's a really good, healthy thing, especially what we're seeing with the retail bonanza today. So again, I give you a lot of credit for, in my opinion, doing it the right way. So I'd love to know, you're CEO, you take a company public. What is it like going through that process? Obviously it's strenuous, but at the end of the moment, I saw the beautiful photo from you at NASDAQ with this. I could see the giant smile behind your mask. I'm like, okay, like that was the moment of success. What was that journey like?
It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Very grateful to be part of it. Wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for our technology leadership and our commercial operations. But it's a long journey. We started writing the S1 August of last year, and we had a lot of great help from our advisors, from the legal counsels, from our audit partners, and we probably took 50 to 100 investor calls, even before the roadshow. At the roadshow, it was really 6 days of nonstop meetings. Spent a lot of time with the research analysts. So And all that accumulated to what amounted to be a very successful IPO. We priced above our range. We raised $1.3 billion as a company, and we have a market cap of $8 billion, which is something that honestly we didn't expect, say a year ago, right? So very fortunate.
And you caught the attention of the world's number one tech investor in terms of media coverage, Cathie Wood's ARK Investment. She's been buying in droves. To me, that's a sign of confidence because Cathie believes in innovators. She backed Elon along with Ron Barron in the public markets when nobody would touch it. To me, that's a really positive sign for the company, the long-term outlook of the stock. But I want to bring this up. I'm a dad. You're a new father. What was it like going through the IPO knowing that, hey, I'm a new dad and I'm doing this IPO? I'm like, well, I'm getting chills and smiles. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, first off, having a very supportive wife is important. 2020 is a memorable year for so many reasons. And for us, it was a big inflection point of TuSimple, became a first-time dad. So really meaningful. Of course, the pandemic was a very challenging year for everybody. We couldn't close our Tucson facility because we had to do testing as well as freight operations. So it was very challenging for all of the men and women that worked there. Obviously, we had a lot of precautions. We took the extra step of delivery food and essential goods for Arizona Food Bank as part of this because we thought it was the right thing to do. And I think just overall, looking back, it's very fortunate to turn a very challenging year into a year that was a big inflection point for TuSimple and my personal life. So.
I want to point out that you did the food bank pro bono. It was done and meaningful, and it had a big impact in the local community. Reading the press reports and seeing these individuals during supply chain shortage, you were able to get food to these individuals that need it the most. And that goes back to leadership. You made the decision that we're going to invest in the community and do right by people. So I'd love to take a step back here for a moment. In 2005, you graduated from the University of Virginia with a degree in computer science and economics. Was this your first introduction to economics of online platforms?
I wish I had more foresight back then to know how technology will change the world. You and I are talking about Facebook. Back then, I think I just signed up for Facebook in 2004 and as a user of Facebook, but certainly couldn't imagine what technology and network-based businesses would change, how that would change the world around us. I did computer science and economics, but I think like many of my peers, I interned investment banking because that was the hardest job to get and it was the best paying job. So I did again, wishing I had more foresight at that time. But it was a great learning experience. Obviously, no regrets there. And then the last 10 years was, when I look back, the last 10 years of my career, looking at kind of what's around, really it was the age of mobile internet, right? It was the Ubers, the food deliveries taking off. And thinking what happens the next 10, 20, 30 years, I think it's safe to say it's going to be the age of artificial intelligence. And autonomous driving is certainly one of the hardest use cases, but one of the biggest opportunities. Autonomous trucking is a massive opportunity. So again, it's very fortunate to be in this position. And so I think my takeaway is we always have to take a step back and think about where's the world going? What is the next 10, 20 years going to be? And try to be in industries that have that long-term exponential growth.
And you have to stay focused during that time. I don't remember the exact year. I remember Yahoo made a $1 billion offer for Facebook. Microsoft made a $1 billion offer for Facebook. And Zuckerberg stuck to his guns and said, we're not selling. So you sign up for Facebook in 2004. In 2005, Facebook generated only $9 million in revenue. In 2020 fiscal year, they generated $86 billion in revenue. That's 15 years Facebook grew revenue by 955,000%. You've got this incredible degree from a world-renowned University of Virginia, which is a fun college town, but more importantly, it's a great education. You've got this foresight into online platforms. TuSimple's building the AFN, and I'm going to say to you, the AFN is the platform for trucking. You will connect the logistics. So how are you preparing for this type of exponential growth? Facebook went through that exponential growth. We could see TuSimple go through exponential growth with the AFN network. What are your thoughts?
I agree. My previous life, I was an investor. Spent a lot of time investing, looking at, and advising growth companies in emerging industries. If you think about the last 10, 15 years, it's the ride sharing, the bike sharing, right? Online to offline. I mean, all the catchphrases. So I spent a lot of time looking through business models and understanding them. And network-based businesses, being able to form a positive network effect is what gives a company a long-term sustainable competitive advantage. And I think that's where we believe our business model is inherently very different than, say, selling a hardware or selling just a piece of software. And that really has shaped our business. And even it means kind of doing the hard things today, like having logistics operations, having terminals, going out and getting great partners, we believe is more meaningful because of that long-term competitive advantage that we'll have. It's a lot more work. It's challenging. And again, we're very fortunate to have strong team members. We have folks that understand logistics. I don't pretend to. We have Jim Mullen, who joined us from FMCSA and previously Warner. We have Lee White, who's 35 years experience at UPS, managing very complex logistics networks. Conrad Miller, Walmart, 20-year Walmart veteran. So we continue to bring on great players, great leaders in this space. And I think that's what's important.
It's another way of how you expand the network. And on TuSimple's Q1 2020 earnings call, you stated the following: the commercial scale of our AFN, which for our listeners is the Autonomous Freight Network, is an important metric of progress because it accelerates adoption of autonomous technology. And using a telecom analogy, the purpose-built autonomous truck is a 5G phone, and AFN is our 5G network. When the 5G phone is produced at scale, we need to have the network in place in order to offer a true service. In our case, the greater the scale and the density of the AFN in terms of freight capacity, trucks and terminals, high-definition mat wraps, that all means customers on the AFN will be able to enjoy greater access to reliable, efficient, and low-cost freight capacity. We're seeing the same thing in telco, as Verizon stated on their earnings call that they're actively expanding 5G. Stakely on AT&T has stated it. So I love to compare and contrast that analogy because I think you're spot on it.
Yeah, we at the heart of TuSimple, we're an artificial intelligence software company, and we're building the most advanced level 4 autonomous driving system. We're also building the hardware in conjunction with our OEM tier 1 partners, and we also have this comprehensive go-to-market strategy, the Autonomous Freight Network. This is important because from a technology standpoint, it's needed. Because as you know, Grayson, all level 4 vehicles operate over high definition map routes. So by inherently, it is a network. It's almost like building a virtual railroad. I think a lot of people who are new to autonomy do not realize called limitations of this technology or what it means to operate a level 4 truck. And so by default, you have these virtual lanes. These lanes have to connect somewhere. So you have nodes into the network, which are terminals. It could be our terminal. It could be our partners' terminals. Basically, it's their distribution centers, their fulfillment centers. And how do you manage all these trucks? You have to have an oversight system because you have thousands and tens of thousands of vehicles on the road. There needs to be a NASA command center like thing. So inherently, you have to have this in order to enable autonomous freight capacity. And then you look at the 5G or telecom, cloud businesses, even Facebook. When you think about how do you offer really a great service, a differentiated service to users that want to have access to freight capacity, then like a network-based business, every additional truck, every additional user on this network will improve the overall benefit of all the other users. And in our case, for every additional truck, every additional lane, terminal, and customer on this network, that increases the overall capacity and the reach of this network. And therefore, any customer that on the AFN can have greater access to reliable freight capacity at lower prices. Another analogy, going back to this 4G, the 5G analogy, I mean, today, for instance, when we look at changing carriers, let's say we're picking between T-Mobile and AT&T, we're not asking ourselves who offers 4G, right? That's kind of given. What we care about is who has the biggest coverage at the lowest prices. And that's going to be no different for autonomy on the trucking side.
And staying on that theme, there was a report from Goldman Sachs recently, which said that it's taking 6 days to unload cargo ships at the port of LA, and normally it takes 2 days. And Goldman Sachs in the report said that was due to a lack of trucks. Will we eventually see the AFN network or a TuSimple hub at ports to, one, shore up the supply chain, two, allow customers to move goods more effectively, and three, move them at a lower cost?
Sure. I mean, today we haven't actively explored the ports in the US, but it does seem like there's certain routes that are repeatable. If there's a delay because of driver shortage or truck, which is capacity shortage, then that does seem like a really good opportunity for autonomy to have a positive impact.
I've said this on many podcasts. I've said this publicly a lot. Autonomy is going to lower the cost of goods. So an individual might be able to get their toilet paper perhaps a little bit cheaper or their food at the grocery store cheaper. So it's not just helping the shipper and the carrier. You're going to have a positive impact on the end consumer. And to me, that's the most important thing, because you're shoring up the supply chain, you're doing good by society, and you're offering the ability to lower the cost of goods for the end consumer. So I want to stay on supply chain here for a minute. You mentioned virtual railroad. I love railroads. I think railroads are cool. I used to go on them when I was a kid on these fun train rides, and I love to do it. But more importantly, rail plays a critical role in the supply chain of moving goods and services. And Mr. Lance Fritz, who's the CEO of Union Pacific Railroad, which is a TuSimple investor, stated the following during Union Pacific's 2021 Investor Day. UP invested in autonomous truck company TuSimple in December to keep tabs on the technology, and so it can test driverless rigs for intermodal drayage service. In my opinion, railroads and autonomous trucks are like peanut butter and jelly. They're a match made in heaven. Could you talk about TuSimple's relationship with Union Pacific? Because Union Pacific is an iconic company doing really good supply chain stuff, moving goods. TuSimple is this new emerging company doing really good things around the supply chain. You talk about that relationship, please?
Of course, we're very grateful, first off, for their investment and their confidence in TuSimple. It's really validation of our technology. Us and UP are collaborating to better understand how this technology can benefit their business. As you said, railroads are very cool. They're inherently a network-based business. They understand complexities of managing networks. And so I think autonomous trucks really complements their business. It allows them to extend their reach. Of course, when you're actually trying to lay real railroad tracks today, it's very expensive and takes time. So the fact that if our autonomous trucks can help them expand their reach faster, certainly that's a win-win.
Will Union Pacific eventually become part of the AFN network?
Yes. So the AFN, the Autonomous Freight Network, think of this as it's a network of networks. For us, we are helping to connect the dots that allow our partners and customers to adopt autonomous technology in their supply chain. And so everyone's part of the Autonomous Freight Network. So it's an ecosystem. We have the opportunity to map our high definition map routes directly to their facilities, their railhead. That becomes a big hub potentially. And so by default, they're part of this network. And so the answer is yes.
Looking to the future, will the AFN, as you bring on more partners and capacity, be able to shore up the domestic supply chain? So if there's goods moving, say, from Texas to Oklahoma or Texas to Phoenix, it'll help shore up that supply chain because you'll be able to add capacity, as we're seeing a lot of factories being built in Texas?
Absolutely. So when we think about what's the biggest problem we can help to solve, it's really the imbalance between demand and supply of freight capacity. I've said this many times, demand, and very obvious, demand continues to increase because of on-demand economy, e-commerce. You and I as consumers, we want our goods delivered today. I just bought something on Amazon today. I was actually disappointed to see that I was getting delivered tomorrow. I was hoping it arrived this morning, today. So that puts tremendous amount of stress on the supply chain. Large carriers, shippers are having to change the supply chain to accommodate customer behavior. And at the same time, on the supply side of trucks and drivers, there's driver shortage. I think that's going to grow to 160,000 over the next few years. The turnover of drivers, especially for the middle mile, the over the road is very high. And so level 4 autonomy really is only technology that can fundamentally enable new freight capacity, right? So if you think about compared to, electrification, that can make it cleaner, but it doesn't create new freight capacity. digital brokerage makes it more efficient, but it doesn't create new freight capacity. And that's where we have the opportunity to help enable new freight capacity to address the supply chain constraints.
Freight capacity is key. I love the Amazon analogy. You're right. If you order something and it's not at your house in a couple hours, like, well, wait a second, what's going on here? I ordered light bulbs, nothing fancy, just light bulbs, and say, oh, it'll be there in 2 days. Why 2 days? I'll just go to the local hardware store to buy the light bulb. It's really amazing how, as consumers, you and I as consumers, our mindset has changed when we order everything. And I'm a little geeky, so I start looking into this. Well, how does it all work? It all comes down to supply chain, and we're seeing supply chain in the media now with the Colonial Pipeline hack. More people are talking about supply chain. So you've got this great understanding of online platform economics. You went to Harvard. You got your MBA. Really great. Another individual that went to Harvard was William Randolph Hearst, and he ended up building Hearst Media, which is a really great thing. And his book was amazing, for the record. Did you study supply chain economics when you were at Harvard in those hollowed halls?
Well, first off, certainly can't compare to Mr. Hearst. long way to go there. We had one class at Harvard HBS called Technology and Operations Management, TOM, and it was understanding supply chain, production lines, and I think my biggest takeaway is you had to look at the throughput of a production line and think about where are the bottlenecks. And you can have this amazing production line or supply chain, but if you have one bottleneck, that decreases the throughput. And so really it's the weakest link, if you will, of any supply chain. I wish I had more opportunity to study more at school. I don't think we had that many classes on supply chain, but I think my hands-on experience has been with TuSimple, with some of the great colleagues I have that understand this better. But yeah, I mean, throughput, when you think about our supply chain, we're already seeing inflation today. I think people are worried about inflation. We're seeing rising cost of just average goods go up. Food prices are going up. And so part of that is supply chain driven. So I think we have really opportunity here to help address this problem.
I totally agree with that. And you made public comments on the earnings call about the chip shortage. You're learning all about supply chain in the real world, and you have a great team and a great board to help you support through that. Another thing that TuSimple does, which I think is awesome, is that you're doing things the right way. You have a partnership with Navistar, where Navistar is manufacturing autonomous trucks in 2024. To me, the important part about that is they're factory-grade trucks. They're being built at a Navistar factory. I was speaking to Cruise the other day, the self-driving car company, and they were emphasizing how that GM is building them for them, and they're coming off the factory. Could you talk about the importance of that partnership? Because it's a proven model when a great technology company comes together with an incredible OEM, special things happen. Special things are happening with GM and Cruise, and I'm sure as heck hoping, and I think so, and I'm going to say I know so, that special things are going to happen with Navistar and TuSimple. Can you talk about that partnership, please?
Sure. We officially entered a partnership middle of last year. At the same time, Navistar took a minority equity investment into TuSimple. So it's a strong partnership. Both sides are very committed to our joint goal of bringing the first purpose-built autonomous truck to the market. And it's a necessary partnership because at the end of the day, trucks are delivery tools, and trucks have to weather the wear and tear of a road, has to drive over 1 million miles. And so the idea that you can have a retrofitted solution for level 4 autonomy, or even level 2 autonomy on a truck from day one seemed not realistic to us. And so a key part of our strategy is to be able to, if you want to scale autonomous freight operations, you have to have purpose-built trucks that's factory produced. And at the same time, we also know the limitations of our company. We're not an OEM. We don't have 100 years of engineering excellence. And so I think that's where the partnership really fits well together. The culture, the team from Navistar has been great. It's been not just one team, but really work across all of their different functions, from engineering to product to supply chain, procurement to sales. And so I think given the amount of work we've done, given the fact that we're in a real production program, OEM production program, I'm very confident that we'll be the first to market together with a purpose-built truck.
Navistar the company, they're great people, and they're very kind. This week they invited me on their podcast, and we talked all about the supply chain of the trucks, and it was a fun conversation. So Navistar, if you're listening, thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan of the company, and as I said to you, I see your trucks every day on the road, so keep selling trucks because you're doing a great job. Because if I'm in the procurement shoes and I'm looking at adding autonomous trucks to my fleet, I'm looking and doing my research and say, okay, well, wait, this is factory built. Navistar knows how to build great trucks. This one's retrofitted. This one's retrofitted. Well, what happens if this thing falls off? Well, I can't eliminate that. Coming from a factory, to me, as a procurement manager, sets me up for success. TuSimple recently announced numbers with 6,775 reservations for the autonomous trucks from companies such as Penske Truck Leasing, Bill Combs, if you're listening, you're wonderful, sir, Schneider, and U.S. Express. Clearly demonstrating a demand. Your customer is saying, we want the real deal Holyfield. We want the real truck. I love to know they're getting all these trucks, and I'm sure there's more trucks coming in the future. How are your customers planning to use these trucks?
I think and this is part of the reservation collaboration that we're having, is how do the customers use these trucks? And this goes back to level 4 autonomous truck is very different than buying, let's say, electric vehicle and having it delivered 4 years from now. Most people can understand how do you charge and operate electric vehicle. But for us, what we do from day one is actually, it's very hand in glove collaboration with our reservation partners to understand where in the supply chain we should deploy autonomy. And it's not everywhere. There are certain lanes that are better suited. There are certain terminals that are better suited. And we have to do the work today because 2024 is actually right around the corner. We have to connect our system with their existing TMS system, right? We're not asking them to change their supply chain to fit our technology. And so those are the things that we're doing. And of course, there's over the road, there's long haul, it's really, I think, deployed in cases where there's repeated routes, high volume routes. And I think if you look at all of these reservation customers, each of them have different places that fit this criteria.
Bob Walsh, who's the Vice President of Emerging Technologies, Strategy and Planning at Navistar, stated the following. These early reservation numbers reflect the appetite surrounding self-driving technology and long-haul applications. Is that the primary market do you see for your early round of customers who are going to look at it for long haul?
That's right. That's where we see the greatest opportunity. It fits with what this technology can do. At the same time, this is also where driver turnover, I think driver shortage, or recruiting costs are the highest. So it really makes a lot of sense. This allows carriers and shippers to redeploy their existing drivers for the first mile and last mile, where autonomous is not going to be able to change that for a long time, just because there's so much human touch. Right? I think someone's telling me a UPS brown van, that person makes 200 drops a day. That's something that autonomy is not going to replace. So we do see the long haul is the best application. It's also the one that's most needed.
I like the UPS analogy. The UPS seemingly, I have a good friend of mine named Roger, and we joke, okay, the UPS truck or the Amazon truck's at our house every day because we're always ordering everything. And you get to know them and you build a relationship with them and you give them a Christmas gift.
Yes.
And so you're right. I don't want a Boston Robotics robot coming up to my house. I want to see Jim. Hey, Jim, good to see you. How are the wife? How are the kids? It's that fun, friendly relationship. And I live in Florida, if it's hot, they make sure that the package is out of the sun, and those last mile drivers, they do a really great job, and they're a part of a fabric of our community. So I totally agree with you on that. In long haul, heck yes, let's shore up the supply chain. So I love to know, Navistar sells a truck to a customer. What is the business model then for TuSimple?
Yeah, the business model for us is we are enabling the autonomous operations. So when a customer buys a truck from Navistar that's powered by TuSimple autonomous driving system, that customer will subscribe to TuSimple Path, which is a per mile subscription based. Think of this as the white glove virtual driver service. Because again, operating an autonomous truck is not something that you can just turn on a switch to do. There's a lot of planning. So first is where the routes. Are the routes mapped? Do you need to update the maps? All the pre-trip, post-trip monitoring and planning. So those are things that TuSimple, we believe inherently because we have this technology we can help provide. So think of this as it's transportation as a service model.
I haven't heard this discussed before. I heard it briefly on the earnings call, but that's powerful. So the individual, I'm going to say I'm Acme Logistics, and I call Mr. Navistar and say, hello, Mr. Navistar, I like to buy 1,000 trucks. I buy 1,000 trucks. Navistar gives me a delivery date. I accept the trucks, and then I subscribe to your service, and then due to the over-the-air updates, the remote monitoring, could you kind of dive more into that as me being Acme Logistics?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing think about it is we want to make this as much of a turnkey solution as possible. And so the minute that there is the handoff from a human to the truck, from point A to point B, we want to ensure that the truck can get there. And so all the logistics planning, the operations of actually operating the autonomous system, the monitoring side of things, and in case there's sort of emergency rescue that's needed, those are things where we want to make a turnkey solution. And I think that, in our view, is the easiest for a customer to get adoption. And so that's how we are shaping the way we go to market.
So again, I'm Acme Logistics. You're helping me optimize my operations, which is fantastic. To me, that's a huge positive win.
Well, I mean, every shipper, every carrier has their own supply chain. We're not suggesting we're going to make it. We're helping you shape your supply chain, but certainly we're working today to embed our technology, autonomous technology, in your supply chain so that we can help you grow your business. I mean, you think about it. 30 years ago, intermodal with rail. So how do you incorporate rail and grow your business twofolds, threefolds? I think that's the same concept. How do you incorporate autonomous technology, make it as turnkey as possible to use, so that you can think about expanding your business? Right today, if you think about the last 10 years, if you look at sort of the size of the top 10 carriers versus today, it really hasn't changed much. In fact, I think it's kind of gone down a little bit. And it is because there's really it's hard to scale, right? There's limited economy of scale. And our technology allows first adopters to take advantage and to scale. You can redeploy precious driver resources on new lanes, offer more services. Before, you have a team driver that goes from coast to coast, but now you can have autonomous drivers, and you free up 2 drivers to offer more services to new customers. So that's how we see ourselves enabling and empowering our customers.
Looking at the autonomous trucking industry as a whole, TuSimple's here. You have the background in supply chain. You understand economics. The team with Mr. Mullen and your various other leaderships, and there's a great gentleman who I'm a big fan of, is Chuck Price, who's your chief product officer. You have these great individuals inside the company that understand trucking. Now, looking at the market as a whole, we're in the midst of what I'm calling the great pivot to trucking. Competitors, or soon-to-be competitors, saying, wait a second, robotaxi, there's no path to profitability here. There's no path to meaningful revenue here. Let's go get in the trucking industry and try and do it like a robotaxi. And then here's TuSimple says, no, we inherently understand the trucking industry. We've never, ever went into the robotaxi business. Why was TuSimple, I'm going to use the word laser focused on trucking and shoring up the supply chain from day one instead of just saying, oh, wait a second, there's a pivot here?
Good question. I mean, I guess my question is why didn't others think about this earlier? It seems very obvious. And I think from day one, we have been laser focused on trucking. From a commercial standpoint, robotaxi has a bigger TAM. But I think we recognize that the value proposition of autonomous trucks, day one, provides a bigger value proposition to all of the key stakeholders in the industry. Right? And there's really a big problem with driver shortage and the imbalance between demand and supply of freight capacity. So I think the number one thing to get adoption into a very disruptive technology is, are you providing significant value to the existing key stakeholders? And I think autonomous trucking checks all those marks. And 2 is, once we recognize that, and of course, as you know, Xiaodi, our technology team's background in artificial intelligence, computer vision, was very suited to solve the unique challenges of trucking. And so from day one, our technology framework, our commercial partnerships, our go-to-market has all been focused around trucking. I think that's our focus, and of course, our technology development has allowed us to be a leader. And now we're seeing more and more people pivot, as you said.
I believe the pivot's being driven by economics. Robo-taxis, people say, oh, this is going to be the shiny new object. I'm going to put it in every urban environment around the world. We'll figure out how we make money later. Uber figured that out. They still haven't really figured out how they're going to make long-term sustainable growth. But the robo-taxi people said, oh, we're just going to figure this out. And then here's the TuSimple team says, wait a second. The global freight industry is a $4 trillion market. And we're seeing a driver shortage. We're seeing supply chain issues. Okay. And you go there, and now all of a sudden everybody's playing catch up to TuSimple. Really, really well done.
Thank you.
Then the other thing and I had Chuck Price on a previous podcast, and we talked about the culture of TuSimple and why the culture of safety and transparency. How is the culture developed from safety from day one? And I said to Chuck, I saw a 60 Minutes piece, and he said, well, what'd you think? I said, Chuck, the one thing that stood out to me more than anything? Every employee in that facility had a reflective vest on. Like there was all these little nuances. I said, wait a second, this is a safety first culture. So I asked Chuck, and he broke down the whole culture of safety. And now with the IPO, the culture is building on transparency. How and why was this culture developed? Because to me, this is a winning formula for a great culture and a great company.
Yeah, I think with any company, the culture gets influenced from both top down and bottom up. And Chuck has day one been a very big proponent of safety. He's really influenced this culture a lot. When we look at we have 5 core values as a company. Safeguard is our number one core value, and safeguard of ourselves, of the people that share the role with us, of our assets, of our investors' assets. And so that's always kind of ingrained in our heads. And I think we have to continue to promote that. Transparency as well. Transparency is important because this has been an industry where a lot of folks have made big promises and under-delivered, right? Because it's not transparent. You can't, unless you go around and have that sort of sit down and get ride in everyone's vehicle over and over again. It's very hard to understand who's exaggerating and who's being transparent. So we thought that was important. Certainly the IPO is a validation point for that. So that's how we continue to shape our culture, and we're going to stay on track.
There was an analyst on the earnings call that asked you about the drive route. And I love your response and said, this is not a demonstration. Brilliant, brilliant response. Could you share any insight or details into the drive route plans?
Sure. You're absolutely right. It's not a demonstration. I think there was one a few years ago in Florida that was a demonstration, right? It was a rolling closure of the road. And we don't need to do that at this point. For us, this is a natural evolution of getting to a purpose-built truck, because from where we are in terms of having just holistic features developed. Today you can come ride our trucks. We pretty much do all the things for delivering freight from terminal to terminal. But to get from this point to a purpose-built truck, it's reliability, redundancy. It's really a massive engineering project. And that's what our drive route pilot program is here to show. Not only just the maturity of our software side, but also the maturity of the design of this redundant and reliable truck. Again, we're still using parts that are not fully auto-grade. We're using parts that we wouldn't be using 3 years from now when it's in full production. But this is an important step in terms of just the design of this vehicle. This will be over close to 100-mile route. It's in Arizona. It's along the I-10. This is good because we do have a lot of experience in Arizona. It's close to our headquarters, so we can test more easily and kind of download the data and triage easier. But it's a very real run. We're delivering freight. It's from terminal to terminal. We're going to do this repeatedly over several weeks, potentially a month. And we feel like we're making all the right progress to get us there.
It's a major milestone. When you're hauling freight, am I safe and right to assume that you're going to be generating revenue on those runs as well?
Yes. We'll probably charge a discount, but yes, we'll be generating revenue.
It's not a demonstration. We're in North America. You've got the great partnership with Navistar, and then Europe, you've got it with Traton Group. Could you talk about why you picked Traton Group for your Europe OEM partnership?
Sure. It was a two-way street. Traton Group is the commercial vehicle division of Volkswagen. Traton Group is one of the largest OEM manufacturers in trucking. They have just renowned brands in Scania, MAN, dominant market share in Europe and other places. So now, of course, they also have ownership in Navistar. So we really value the relationship. They're very strong historically. I think about Scania has been known to make the most technology advanced trucks. So they value technology. And so for those reasons, we thought it was the right partnership. We demonstrated progress already. Again, 2020 has been a memorable year. Trying to have the first hub-to-hub testing in Sweden, in Europe, despite the pandemic, was challenging. Our folks couldn't even travel to Sweden without visas. When they had to come back, there's very long quarantines. And so we overcome all those challenges. And in the first quarter of this year, we actually had the first hub-to-hub public road testing for a Class A truck in all of Europe. And we did that in a matter of a month, despite the pandemic.
Goes back to leadership. I'd love to know, for our listeners who might not be familiar with hub-to-hub, how would you define hub-to-hub?
I use the word hub and terminals interchangeably. And a hub it's a shifting yard. It's a terminal to house trucks. It could be a fulfillment center. It's really those things. And I think of a hub as usually some place that's a few miles off the highway. It's not going to be on the highway. And so it's important because this goes back to the trend of on-demand economy. Our customers, our partners, are already facing a lot of pressure in supply chain. The autonomous trucks have to operate out of their facilities because of the tightness in supply chain. And so our technology has to be able to drive both on surface streets and highways in order to do this. And I think that's something that TuSimple is the only company who's demonstrated the ability to drive on not only highways, but also surface streets.
You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe from doing research and speaking to individuals in Arizona, you actually, when you go off highway, you go over a railroad. Is that true?
We do. We do have a railroad crossing in Tucson. And so that's something that our algorithms or our truck knows how to solve for.
You call it an edge case, or that's an issue that has to be solved? Because if I'm going to put on my Acme Logistics hat here for a moment, I want to partner or hire a company that can go pick up at my warehouse and take it to the other one. I don't want to have something pull off the highway, and that just creates too much of a bottleneck in supply chain, and that's going to drive my cost up. So your technology will allow me as Acme Logistics to lower my cost and secure my supply chain. We got a lot on supply chain here, but I want to ask you this partnership question because I'm doing research for this, and I was like, oh, okay, we got a partnership with McLane. Well, I know McLane. They're owned by Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger's Berkshire Hathaway. I was like, whoa, okay, well, what's going on here? Are you currently delivering goods for McLane, or what does that partnership look like?
Yeah, we are actively hauling freight for McLane. We're testing our autonomy as well. McLane is a $50 billion revenue business. They're one of the top two players in delivering frozen foods to restaurants. They have a very large private fleet. So they use both their own drivers as well as third-party carriers to help them move logistics. And so if you think about their business, there's that sort of long-haul part of delivering, going from one distribution center of theirs in one city to another. And then there's that sort of last mile, which is going from the DC to a storefront, right, to a Taco Bell or Pizza Hut. And their driver resources are limited, just like a lot of players today. So if there's opportunity to utilize autonomy for that over the road, let's say from Phoenix to Dallas or Phoenix to El Paso, and free up their drivers to do the last mile delivery, so going from DC to storefront, that increases the utilization of their drivers and trucks. It allows their drivers to stay home at night or go home at night. And I think for those reasons, that's attractive to them, of course. It allows them to expand where they can offer their business and their services to, like how many stores they can offer their services to. So I think it really is a win-win, and it's been a great partnership. We've started, I think, in 2019, and it's still going strong.
Awesome. Cheng, we've covered a lot of ground during this podcast. You've shared incredible insights. You shared the TuSimple vision, the TuSimple story. I'd love to know in wrapping this up, what would you like our listeners to take away from this conversation?
Well, I just want to, I think thank you and for having me, and really thank the listeners for their time and interest. I look forward to hopefully being back if I'm invited back. And in the meantime, look forward to following your insights in this industry.
Oh, thanks. You're always welcome here. You're a great company. I wish you nothing but success, nothing but the best, because you're going to do great things. And as an investor in the public markets, I will say this on my own behalf. Thank you for doing things the right way. And thank you for not taking shortcuts. As we've heard on today's podcast, the future is bright, the future is autonomous, and the future is TuSimple's Autonomous Freight Network. Cheng, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Road to Autonomy podcast. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Want to get in touch? Follow us on Twitter at Road to Autonomy or email podcast@brulteco.com. The Road to Autonomy is produced by Brulte & Company. The views and opinions expressed on the Road to Autonomy podcast do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Brulte & Company. The content discussed on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as legal, tax, investment, or business advice.